we get in the door, we're just happy to be here. But at a certain point, you're just grabbing it, signing the contract. If you have contracts, shaking the hand, taking whatever money they give you, if they give you any money, and you're like, yes, I'm just happy to be here. At a certain point though, your vocation, your career has to become a business. These companies, these organizations, whomever is hiring you, they can't function without you. We are the people that bring the content, because I'm a journalist. We're the people that bring the content. We're the people that do the service. We're the people that are getting hired for these things. If we weren't getting hired for these things, if we didn't bring value, then we wouldn't be hired. It's not an altruistic thing. So you absolutely need to be raising your price. Beginning of the year is the best time to do it, but I've done it in mid-year too. Here are the reasons why. Number one, if you're keeping your prices low out of fear, which I'm gonna keep it real with you, a lot of us do it because of fear, because we're afraid people aren't gonna pay more. It becomes what Seth Godin calls a race to the bottom. If I have a service and I'm charging $1 for it, and then you're like, no, I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna compete with Damon, so I'm going to charge 55 cents. There's two ways I can react to that. The first way is for me to up my level of service or give some type of added value so that you keep coming to me, right? And we'll get into that in the next point. The other way to do it, which is the race to the bottom, is for me to drop my prices to 50 cents, right? No Curtis Jackson. And then what's gonna happen? You're gonna be like, oh, well, let me drop mine to 45 cents. And at a certain point, your cost, what we would call overhead, the amount of money it takes for you to run your business, the business of the business, which we'll also get into, that will start outstripping the amount of profit you get. And those profit margins, as they're called, will become really, really small. In fact, you might start losing money. But you're so worried about what I'm doing, what somebody else is doing, that you're competing on price. That becomes a race to the bottom. Again, as Seth Godin says, shout out to him. So if you're in a race to the bottom, you're gonna be at the bottom of the barrel. And then next year, you're probably not gonna be here because you're not gonna be able to actually function as a business. So number one, if you're just competing on price, it's a race to the bottom. Are you gonna be, as I talk about in my new book, Career Remix, are you gonna be McDonald's? Or are you gonna be French Laundry, which is a very fancy restaurant up in the Bay Area? What are you trying to do? If I have a specific moment I want to have, or my friends do, whatever, and we happen to have the money, we're doing French Laundry. McDonald's is, we're on the road and my kids are hungry and they're really getting on my nerves. I need to give them some nuggets. What are you trying to do, right? That's the race to the bottom. And at a certain scale, shout out to Amazon, shout out to McDonald's, shout out to Walmart. At a certain scale, these bigger businesses are going to squash you on price anyway. You gotta give something else. Amazon, Walmart, I could do a whole video on just one of them, the amount of businesses they squashed out because of price. So your main advantage cannot be price, particularly in this environment. Number two, especially right now with the new year, you have to keep in mind of the cost of living. Right now, it's 2022 when I'm recording this. We're about 2 years, about to go into the third year of this pandemic. The reason why I bring this up, because I try to keep my stuff evergreen, so I think it'd still be relevant when you watch this. The reason why I bring this up is that interest rates are crazy. So right here in America, we're looking at 7-8% interest rates, even higher, which means that if you have $100 in 2021, then it's worth about $93 this year, roughly. What's it gonna be next year? If you have a traditional job, you can go in and say, hey, I'd like to get a raise. Or they might even say, hey, here's a extra 3% to reflect the cost of living, which you might have heard depending on the business that you've had or that you've worked at. If you're independent though, nobody's gonna do that for you. You have to pay your own taxes. Like, no one's coming to save you. So you have to build that COLA in. And I bring up the pandemic because it's a much longer story with the amount of money that's been printed and the amount of services that we've had to do and the compensation we've had to do for people who are having a really tough time right now. the inflation for America is approaching double digits, which means that you need to raise your price. But this was important before the pandemic. I was raising my price way before the pandemic. Now, again, if you're charging somebody $100 last year, they give you $100 this year, that $100 has $93 worth of spending power. Imagine what it might be like next year. That's always happening. It's just really obvious now. Number 3, you have to give yourself a raise. This sounds crazy. Even if your business is doing rough, which I've had my years, I've been in the game for a little while. You got my sympathy. I get it. You're like, how can I give myself a raise when I have like mothballs coming out of my wallet? Well, raising your price is part of doing that raise, right? But it's also the business of your business. Shout out to Terry McMullen, who I first heard this from. We often forget that we actually hired ourselves. I am founder of Cuddler, which is a company I sold, of So Quotable. I'm founder of my private coaching. Private coaching? I'm blanking on the word. It's private and it's coaching. You can go to DamonBrown.net to learn more about it. But I'm in charge of that company. Let's call it a company. My company with that and all these things. I'm even CEO of an executive producer of this show. If I was doing this in a traditional environment, then I would hire someone to be CEO. I would hire someone to be COO, hire someone to be VP, even hire someone to be an executive assistant or an administrative assistant. But I'm hiring myself. So am I paying myself? It's not saying that you have to empty out the coffers and give yourself a raise and say, I'm going to go ahead and spend this money because I deserve it. It's to realize that you are the founder of whatever stuff you're doing, and you're also the CEO. The founders hire the CEOs. You're hiring yourself. When the hell are you going to give yourself a raise? Lastly, and this is the most important thing, when you raise your price, and you should, I don't care if it's New Year or not, it forces you to add value. So many of my mentors, so many people that I appreciate have said this to me where it's like, Damon, don't give a coupon. Don't drop your price. Don't do 2 for 1, unless it happens to be part of your environment. I've done a couple of those sales, but that should not be your trigger. That should not be the thing. Your thing should be, I'm going to do this price, but I'm going to give this value. So the best advice I got from a mentor of mine years ago was that if you're asking essentially for $10, then you should be giving 10x the value, $100. That is scalable, that's approachable to everything. If you're asking for this, you should be 10xing whatever it is. All right, let's get into it. Price versus cost. Price is what you pay. Cost is what you give up. Price is what you pay. Cost is what you give up. What are you sacrificing to get this particular goal done? What are you willing to give up, to say no to have this one thing? And it goes well beyond money. There's 3 ways you can look at it. The first thing, and the easiest way to break this down, is to think about those things you can't recoup. I talk about this in my book, Build From Now, How to Know Your Power, See Abundance, and Nourish the World. Came out a couple years ago. Thanks for all the love and support. We talk about the fates: focus, agility, time, and energy. These are resources that we all have, but they're all in relatively limited quantities. Some parts of our lives we have more, some parts of our lives or times in our lives we have less. Just kind of the way it works. If you want to learn more about your own resources, you can take a free quiz at buildfromnowquiz.com. The link is below. When you're working with these resources, it's important to understand those things that you can't recoup. When I was thinking about this, I was thinking about my late grandmother, rest in peace. She's actually above me, metaphorically, but she's also in the picture right above my head. When I would go visit her, my mother and I would go visit her on the East Coast, where I'm originally from in Jersey. She would have us drive around to where the biggest discounts were. Particularly, I remember specifically with batteries. She was really into batteries because she liked electronics and stuff like that, like for her old school radio. And she'd go and have us take her to these places that had super cheap batteries. Like before they were dollar stores, right? They're prevalent now. The batteries would be, 10 for $1, that kind of thing. And the batteries would last about a week, maybe 2 weeks, something like that. And then she'd be complaining on the phone that the batteries don't work anymore. But she got a great deal. The price was cheap. The cost was peace of mind that the stuff wouldn't work after a little while. Not to mention the cost and the time and the mental space it required to figure out where the best deals were at this store, at that store, and have to map it out and figure out exactly where we're going to go to get her all these batteries. We make those assumptions and those shifts all the time. I'm a business coach. I negotiate folks through this and negotiate myself through this all the time. We think that because something is cheaper, it is therefore better, and there's more we can do with our money, our time, our resources, again, the fates I was talking about. But what kind of mental shape does that put us in? The second thing when you're thinking about price versus cost is to remember your worth. This actually goes back to Gay Hendricks. He has a great book called The Big Leap where he talks about this. Talks about you being in your zone of genius versus your zone of competence. Your zone of competence are things that you can do with your eyes closed. Your zone of genius is the shit that you're really good at. He gives this great example that I cite in some of my earlier business books as far as an executive that ended up spending a whole day, like a whole Saturday, trying to get his printer to work. He ended up getting frustrated. He grabbed a kid down the street that he knew, a neighborhood kid, and paid the kid $100 to go and fix it. The kid fixed it in, I want to say 10, 15 minutes, done, right? I used to be one of those kids. My kids are becoming those kids as I get older. That's just how it works. It's usually a kid in the neighborhood, that's working on the tech. The point that Gay was getting at was that this executive made, I want to say about $500, $600 an hour. An hour. He spent the whole Saturday, his day of rest, trying to fix this printer. I think he spent about 10 hours doing it, if I remember correctly. So do the math on that. What's that, $5,000? He paid a kid $100. I love the side hustles. He's giving this kid a side hustle. That $100 is a lot to a 17-year-old. And he was able to go ahead and maximize his stuff. You have to remember your worth. Are your resources better served somewhere else? If you're paying less for something, but that cost ends up costing you way more financially or otherwise, it might not be worth it. It doesn't make any sense for me to always do the dishes, always cut my lawn, always do these particular details if I can actually accomplish more by sharing that with people who are experienced at that. Again, adding to the side hustle economy and also maximizing my time, my focus, my agility, my time, my energy. Back to the idea of the fates I talk about and build from now. Lastly, number 3, this is what always gets us when it comes to price versus cost. You have to check your headspace. Where is your head at? Where are you? Are you stressed out about this? If paying a little bit more or hunting for a deal so you can save literally a couple pennies, if that's stressing you out, the cost of that is way more in most of our cases. I've been broke before, so there's no judgment on any of y'all. But if you're in that position and you have the opportunity to actually pay more, then it's actually worthwhile and it makes sense. I remember I was traveling after the sheltering in place started to lift last year. And it was a travel situation. I usually don't get stressed with travel, but I was super stressed about it. Just because there was some dynamics going on, it was not a comfortable situation. And I could alleviate the stress about it by just getting another hotel room. Easy. I sat with that for a week, 2 weeks. And finally, I was like, you know what? Wait a second. I get another hotel room. It was going to cost me about $100, $150. Something that I could afford at the time. And I did it, and suddenly everything opened up. The price was let's say $150. The cost of not doing that, though, was my peace. As they say nowadays, I am reclaiming my time and I am protecting my peace. That $150 that I spent was some of the best money I spent last year, because suddenly I have peace of mind. How much stress, how many business opportunities, how much peace of mind did I lose in waiting that week, 2 weeks, debating about the situation that wasn't really a situation because it was actually resolvable. It was easily resolved with me paying a higher price, and I wouldn't have to pay the cost of not doing that. And we face this every single day when we make business decisions. We decide or not decide to invest in ourselves, when we take the hours or the time or sometimes the sacrifice required to get to the next level. The price might be you doing a few late nights. The price might be you side hustling for a little while. The price might be you having to deal with a job a little bit longer than you want to. But the cost of not doing that, that's, as I always tell my coaching clients, what you're doing, will it work 1 year, 3 years, 5 years into the future? With the path that you're on, are you going to be in a better place? Are you going to be in a place where you're happier? Are you going to be in a place where you'll be making a better impact on the world? If that's not the case, then you need to change your strategy. I did a recent video on plan versus strategy. I'll put the link up here. I'll put the link somewhere up here. You know, I always get mixed up with each side. Check that one out, because plans make sense when it comes to price. You can save a quick buck right now. Strategy makes sense when it comes to cost. If I do not invest in myself, in my business, in my improvement, in making the world better right now, how will that jack up my strategy in the future? But if you have a strategy, you won't see that. And if you're busy making plans, you'll just be focused on the price. And that is too much of a price to pay. Because we're always selling ourselves. We're always trying to pitch ourselves. We always want to bring it home, right? But what happens when we actually get in the door? That's the most important part. That's the long term. That's what Simon Sinek would talk about as far as with the infinite game in his most recent book. So there are two things that happen if you don't shut up after you have someone engaged. First of all, you bring about doubt. I always ask, if someone's trying to get me to join a class, buy a product, get a service, and I say, yes, I'm interested, where do I sign up? And they keep pitching me, then I start asking, why shouldn't I? So if you keep talking, people are like, well, why shouldn't I do this? People will catch my column. They might read like 10 of my columns and then finally go and check out one of my books. In other words, by the time the person says, yes, I'm interested, they've already done their research on you, subconsciously or not. And whether you're aware of it or not, they might not even be aware of it. Isn't it the advertising saying where someone has to see a logo or a product like 16 or 20 times before they actually engage with it and buy that product or give it a second look? That engagement happens all the time, particularly in our world of social media. So if someone says yes to you, then they're already interested. So if you keep going, the only thing that can happen is you losing the sale. Again, it's that question of why shouldn't I? Like, why are you still talking if your main intention was to serve me? I'm ready to be served. Why are you still talking? And the only thing you give room for is doubt. Number two, it will make the audience question if you're capable of this. It reminds me of a classic cartoon, I want to say The Far Side, where it's salespeople who are sitting in a living room, and it's this couple who look very comfortable. It's their house, just staring at them. And the salespeople are looking and saying, I don't know what to do next because we never made it this far. In other words, these salespeople, probably door-to-door salespeople, have been knocking on doors and no one let them in. Because no one let them in, they didn't know what to do when someone actually let them in. It's a hilarious cartoon. I saw it when I was a kid. I want to say it's a Far Side, so shout out to Gary Larson. I think about that all the time. In other words, it makes you question if the people who are selling to you are capable of actually following through. Do you know what you're doing? In other words, if you say, Damon, I'm interested in being coached by you, and we have a 15-minute preliminary session, you go to damonbrown.net, we can do this real time. If we got to enter that consultation and you're like, yes, Damon, I'm ready to sign up. What if I didn't have my damonbrown.net platform optimized so that people can automatically sign up for my coaching session? What if I didn't already have the structure set? 3 sessions or 6 sessions as of this recording for my coaching sessions. What if I didn't have a price in mind? My prices are right on my website. You can go to damonbrown.net. My prices are right there. You know that I'm ready for when you're ready. When you do sales, marketing, advertising, any type of thing, if you're creating something, you want to get into someone's hands, you have to begin with the end in mind. Shout out to the late Stephen Covey. You have to begin with the end in mind. In other words, once someone says yes, then what? Like the classic cartoon says, if you don't know what happens after you get in the door, after someone says yes, you've already lost. Because even if someone does say yes, you're going to be looking really confused. And if it's a highly competitive area, such as being a coach, such as being an author, such as being a TED speaker, which I've done it 4 times, once you get in that door, once they come in your door, I should say, think about the cartoon. Once they come in your door, there's no guarantee that they're going to stay. They're ready to be served. So you have to think about your systems, your processes before you start selling. Otherwise, that yes is going to hit you like a Mack truck.